All right, if you're a Salesforce developer, you know the goal is always to build powerful, scalable apps. But you also know that sometimes the platform itself can feel like it's putting up roadblocks. So today, we're going to demystify one of the most powerful tools you have for smashing through those barriers, Asynchronous Apex. So let me ask you this. Have you ever built a process that works perfectly, only to have it completely fall over during a big data load? Or maybe you've created a cool new feature that, unfortunately, slows the whole user interface down to a crawl. If you're not in your head right now, then you've definitely had a run-in with Salesforce's most famous gatekeepers, governor limits. Okay, let's get into it. To understand our hero, Asynchronous Apex, we first have to meet the villain of our story, the one it was designed to defeat, governor limits. So what are these things? Well, the key thing to get is the why. See, Salesforce is what we call a multi-tenant platform. You're basically sharing server resources with thousands of other companies. Governor limits are just the rules of the road that stop any one person from hogging all the CPU, memory, and database power. They're necessary for sure, but man, can they be a pain. Here's a great way to think about it. Imagine a restaurant. Synchronous processing is like having just one chef. They have to cook one dish at a time in order. The waiter and the customer just has to stand there and wait until that one dish is done before the chef can even start the next one. But asynchronous processing, that's like having a full kitchen staff. The head chef can delegate tasks. You chop veggies, you grill the steak, you make the sauce, all happening at the same time. The whole meal gets done way faster and nobody is the bottleneck. And the consequences when you do hit those limits? Oof, they are not pretty. You get frustrated users staring at loading spinners, you get critical processes that just fail with no warning, and sometimes your code is so inefficient that Salesforce literally won't even let you deploy it to production. That's the problem we're here to solve. And this is where our hero finally makes its grand entrance. When your regular processes get too big, too complex, or too long-running for the normal synchronous world, Asynchronous Apex swoops in to save the day. You know, the magic of Async Apex is that it runs your code in the background on a totally separate thread. What does that mean for you? Well, it means it gets its own much higher set of governor limits. And it frees up the user interface so your users can keep on working instead of waiting for some complex process to finish. Because at the end of the day, that's the goal, right? A fast, responsive application and happy users who aren't constantly staring at a loading screen. Asynchronous Apex is absolutely key to making that happen, especially as your org gets more complex and your data grows. Now, Asynchronous Apex isn't just one single thing. It's really a whole toolkit of different methods, and each one has its own special powers. So let's take a look at what you have at your disposal. Yep, there are 4 main tools in your async toolkit, and believe me, picking the right one for the job is half the battle. So let's break them down. First up, we've got future methods. Think of these as your go-to for simple, fire-and-forget tasks. The absolute classic example is making a call out to an external web service from inside a trigger. The big thing to remember with these is their limitation. You can't pass complex S-objects to them, only simple things like record IDs or strings. They're basic, but incredibly useful. Next, we bring out the heavyweight champion, Batch Apex. Anytime you need to process thousands or even millions of records, we're talking data cleansing, mass updates, archiving old data, Batch Apex is your guy. It does this brilliant thing where it chops up your massive data set into manageable little chunks, and it processes each chunk in its own transaction with its own governor limits. This is how you can chew through up to 50 million records without breaking a sweat. So what if a future method is just too simple for what you need? Well, that's where Queueable Apex comes in. It's kind of the modern, more powerful version. The killer feature here is job chaining. One queuable job can actually kick off another one, which lets you build these really complex sequential processes. Plus, big bonus, unlike future methods, you can pass full S objects into them. Super flexible. And finally, there's Scheduled Apex. As the name suggests, this is for anything that has to run on a schedule. Think nightly data syncs, or generating weekly summary reports, or maybe running daily cleanup tasks. You just write the logic, and then you tell Salesforce exactly when you want it to run. Every Tuesday at 2 a.m., first of the month, done. So let's do a quick recap of the toolkit. Future methods for your simple, one-off jobs. Batch Apex when you're dealing with massive amounts of data. Queueable for those more complex, chainable processes. And Scheduled Apex for anything that needs to happen on a recurring basis. Knowing these 4 is really the key to mastering async development.
Look, having these powerful tools is one thing, but using them wisely, that's what separates the good developers from the great ones. So let's talk about a few best practices for using Async Apex responsibly.
This is so important, and it comes straight from the Salesforce developers blog. Asynchronous Apex is not a magic wand you wave to fix poorly written code. So often, developers jump to an async solution when just a little bit of refactoring of their original code would have solved the problem. You should always ask yourself first, can I optimize this before I make it asynchronous?
And the number one optimization, whether your code is sync or async, is bulkification. This means you should never, ever, ever put a SOQL query or a DML statement inside a for loop. Don't do it. Instead, loop through your records, collect what you need, like IDs, into a list or a map, and then perform one single database operation on that whole collection outside the loop. This is probably the single most important best practice in all of Apex. And finally, just watch out for these common traps. Yes, you can still hit async limits, they're just higher. Remember, the execution order is not guaranteed, so don't build logic that depends on it. Always, always build in good error handling. And for goodness sake, keep an eye on the Apex jobs page and setup so you know what's actually running in your org. Okay, we have covered the what, the why, and the how. So now let's put it all together into a really simple framework so you can make the right choice every time. All right, let's walk through the super simple decision tree. Just need to make a quick call out or offload a basic task. A future method is probably perfect. Are you processing a massive amount of data, like millions of records? That is a job for batch Apex, no question. Do you need to chain jobs together or pass complex S objects? Go with the flexibility of Queueable Apex. And finally, does it need to run at a specific time or on a recurring basis? That's scheduled Apex all the way. It's that simple. You see, when you really master asynchronous Apex, you stop just being a coder and you start becoming an architect of truly scalable, robust solutions on the Salesforce platform. You have the toolkit now to conquer governor limits and to build applications that actually delight your users instead of frustrating them. So the only question left is, what are you going to build?